then naturally, I'm just thinking survival at this point. Because I'm in an area you don't want to be in. I don't know who's going to get to me first. So I grabbed my M4. I couldn't see anything because my eyeball was still hanging out. My hand was shattered and I really couldn't grab anything with it. But I grabbed my M4. The barrel was bent. I was like, that's not going to do me any good. So I threw that away. And I had a pistol and a grenade. So I racked the pistol and I had the grenade and I pulled the pin and I'm waiting. Because my kids were not going to see me on Al Jazeera. And if anybody followed the war, you kind of know what that is. Basically, they'll execute you live and put it out there for everybody to see. A good friend of mine that was, so I was working with the guys you really want to be working with, good friends of mine that I'd worked with a lot, the special operations side of the military. Came running up to me and I heard his voice and I held up the grenade and the pistol, and that's the last thing I remember. I was in a coma for 2 months. 38 back surgeries. I've had 56 total surgeries. I know that seems like a lot. I still have more in my future, so it really doesn't seem like that much to me. We'll wait and see what we can total. But I just remember waking up in the hospital bed and everybody is around me. I'm at Walter Reed at this point, and this is kind of my first introduction into politicians. All these politicians wanting to come in my room, take a picture, and this and that. I don't know how many I kicked out of my. I kicked Donald Rumsfeld out of my room. I told him to get the hell out. I don't want you in here. But laying in that hospital bed, listening to all these people feel sorry for me. First of all, I don't want that. I don't want anybody to pity or feel sorry for me because I can probably beat 90% of the people at anything I want to beat them at in life. Maybe not running, but I can even the playing field, I guess. But I laid there and all these doctors were telling me what I was and was not going to do. And and again, that's kind of the first time in my life I really experienced negativity. Because I was always super positive and always believed in myself no matter what. And I just laid in that bed and I got pissed off. And I knew that I wasn't going to be the same. And so I think laying in that bed is the way I approached it was, it's time to close this chapter of your life and you're going to start a new one. So that's what I did. So I go through all these surgeries and a bunch of other mishaps because I was in Walter Reed when all the controversy was there. Real quick story about that. So I was getting an MRI, and this is right after I woke up out of a coma. I was at Walter Reed getting an MRI, and I'm in the machine. And first of all, I hate the things anyway, but it's loud, and man, something didn't feel right to me. It was hurting really bad, and to be on as much drugs as I was on and hurting, it was bad. So I kept hitting emergency stop, and the technician told me that he was going to tie my hands to my body. And thankfully my brother was there, because my brother said, no, you're not, because then you're going to be escorting me out of here or something, whatever he said. But what happened is they had the wrong kind of metal in my back and my spine, so it pulled all the metal out of my body and my hips. And so that was kind of my first, I guess, really indication of how stupid some people are, I guess. I don't know. So my family fought really hard to get me out of there. So the next day I was on an airplane going to San Antonio, Texas, to Walter Reed. Not Walter Reed, to BAMC, Brooke Army Medical Center. So I got there and then I was still bedridden. I was in a full body cast, laying on my back. Couldn't do anything but look up and read. So I just kind of became a student in the game of my injuries, and so my doctors, my surgeons would bring me these medical books, and I didn't know half the terminology, but after a few weeks, they were coming in and I was briefing them. They were like, "Oh shit." They were like, "Maybe you should go to medical school." I was like, "No." But so laying in that bed and still all the negativity of what you're not going to do, you're not going to fly, and flying is, a huge passion of mine. And I love hunting, which is very controversial. I don't know how many death threats I've had for posting stuff on Facebook. The only difference between me and most is I'll give them the chance. I'll meet them. I always tell them that. But, so I laid there and finally, I don't know, it was probably another 3 weeks. It was the first time they strapped me to a bed and they leaned me up so I could look at myself in the mirror. I broke into tears, started crying, then I passed out. I was in the military. I was about 205, 210 pounds, 6% body fat. I was a stud. I worked my butt off. I got down to 138 pounds of nothing. Yeah, it was very, very tough, very disheartening for me to see myself like that. And, you know, I spent the, well, and I get depressed. I'm on all sorts of drugs that no human being should probably be on. And I started getting depressed, feeling sorry for myself. Why me? You know, the whole pity party thing. And that's when I say in that video, I finally got to get out of my room and I went out to that you kind of saw it there. I was sitting in a wheelchair, but before that I was in a bed and you could just like look out. I just wanted to look outside. And a man by the name of Merlin German, he's the worst burn survivor in the history of our country. He was burned like 99.4% of his body. He was there. We didn't say anything to each other. I just looked at him, he looked at me, and we just kind of gave a heads up. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because no matter how bad you have it, somebody always has it worse, kind of thing. And, excuse me. And so, later on, after that, we became friends. And in 2013, he went in for just a very minor face surgery on his lips. He never woke up. And you know, all the loss I've seen in my life and all the friends I've lost, and you know, that one really hit home for me, of how precious and how short this life can be. Even though that I died twice already, it took that to really have it sink in for me. So, you know, shortly after that, I started my rehab, and I busted my butt. I was an officer, so nobody ever told me what to do. It was on me. I just went in and I did it. Everybody else, you know, all the military guys know how the enlisted ranks work. You got to have formations and all that stuff. Fortunately, I'm self-motivated enough. They knew it. Just get out of my way, and I'm going to make it happen. And so I kind of used that time to prepare myself mentally for what I was about to face. I couldn't, even though I could wear a leg, I could only take about 4 or 5 steps because the muscles in my back, the muscles in my butt didn't work because of all the nerve damage. My right knee was completely dislocated, so I was always wearing a brace on it, and I've had 6 surgeries on it. But I really just pushed myself forward and became an advocate for myself, I guess. And you know, I got the call for the TV show, and I knew that there was no one-legged guys climbing mountains, and so that intrigued me a lot. I'd already done a lot of things as far as like flying helicopters and airplanes, and one of the biggest things that kind of set me back was all the drugs I was on. And you hear about that on the news, where the military guys, you know, they can get whatever they want. They can. You can. I was on, if anybody knows anything about all that stuff, I was on 70 milligrams of Dilaudid 3 times a day, plus I could push a button every 2 minutes to get it injected straight into my system. Oxycontin, methadone, Seroquel. Basically, I was on enough painkillers, if you were to take a portion of it, you would die instantly. And so, being me, they told me, they said, well, it's on you to wean yourself off of it. Okay. So I stopped. Cold turkey. Dumbest shit I ever did in my life. They had to put me back in a coma. I almost died again from withdrawals and everything. So I was in a coma for about another 8 days, I think. So they did it medically. They weaned me off of it and came out, and I haven't taken a painkiller since. I barely even take aspirin now. Just a mental thing for me. Last knee surgery, they gave me the pain pills and I tossed them in the trash. But so as I kind of went through all of this. I made a lot of connections. I got to experience a lot in the political world, and I knew that someday I wanted to throw my name in the hat. That day's not here yet. We'll see. But I love this country more than anything in the world. And I just feel like the way it's going, we're not gonna have a country. And if we don't stand up and we don't take this stuff seriously, this country's, it'll never be like it ever was, like we know it. It'll be gone, if that made sense. But how we do that is, it's time for us to stand up. You have to speak out. You can't let the silent, the loudest minority overrule the majority, and that's what's happening. We're not having the backbone to stand up and fight the fight. It's not very difficult to argue with a person that thinks like that, because they know one fact. All you got to do is just, they know the bullet points, and that's it. Most of the time, they don't have any background or anything that they can argue with you on, and that's why it turns evil, and that's why they turn mad and they start yelling at you, because that's all they know how to do, and we let it happen. But sorry, I sidetracked on that. Back to my story. So I decided that I thought I was going to stay in the military, but I went to Washington. I stood in front of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Cody was the he was the Chief of Staff of the Army. I knew him really well. And he looked at me, and he said, because they wanted me to go to Washington and fly Blackhawks and be a VIP pilot. And I told him that I wasn't a taxi cab driver, because I flew attack helicopters, and that was just my personality. And so he looked at me and said, "Scrogin, if you get shot down again, and and he goes, how are you going to escape and evade?" I thought about it for a second, and all these high-ranking generals are sitting there. I looked at him and I said, "Well, shit, sir, if you're flying with me and we get shot down, you break your leg, how are you going to escape and evade? I can carry a spare." And at that point, though, I knew that my time was over, because I wasn't going to be a poster boy for anything like that. And so I retired from that. Challenges were not yet over. I was doing rehab one day in the CFI, and so I'm a current employee of the FAA, so still work for the government, very efficient. But so I was walking through, and there was a lady there. They were recruiting critically wounded vets for the FAA for air traffic control at the time. And nobody had made it, and my physical therapist said, "Pat, you'd be perfect for this." And the lady's like, "No, he can't do it. We already looked at his packet." And I stopped. I was like, "What do you mean I can't do it?" So now I'm an air traffic controller. But they were worried because I died twice, and I was dead for 5 minutes the first time, 3 minutes the second time. They were worried about cognitive brain damage and all that, whatever. I just had to take a bunch of tests and proved them wrong. And so now that's what I do. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's been a great career, but it's coming to an end here pretty soon, and I'll have to do something else. But it's still an awesome feeling every day. I mean, I work with some of the most amazing controllers on earth, and I think I can relate that to the military, because the units I was in the military are the top 1% of human beings. I mean, they truly are giants. And so when I came up here to C90, that's kind of how it is. I mean, C90 is the radar approach control. Although there's a lot of egos in that room, more egos than I've ever seen in my life anywhere, some of the best controllers in the world work in that building. And I know that when my kids fly in and out of here, they're safe, because you guys are awesome. But anyways, that's kind of my story.